Hey guys, before we get started, I just want to let you guys know this video will be talking about these issues. Watch with caution. If you have kids watching with you, be ready to have a lot of questions after. Thanks. Oh wait, I forgot my notes. We're off to a great start. This video's already gonna have bloopers. So we'll start there. Disclaimer, this video is semi-scripted. I did do some notes for it, but for the most part, I'm gonna be just word vomiting, I guess. Hopefully not actually vomiting, but I might cry. So this is gonna be the first video in a 3-part series. This is going to explain why for the last year my schedule has been basically non-existent and why my content has changed so much. Second disclaimer, if I get up and change outfits in the middle of this video, it's because I'm still getting used to how my body looks after literally producing another human. But we're gonna talk about that, because I think I took down all the videos that mentioned it. For this little coming back to YouTube series, it's gonna be like a life update. Before we get into that, I'm gonna do a little bit of housekeeping. That's what they always call it on podcasts. By the way, I plug my podcast that I also have not updated in quite a while. I'm going to try my best not to cry in this video because I have a show on Saturday. By the way, I perform live music now, so if you're in my area, please come out and support. It means the world to me, and also I need to get better practice at being in front of people anyways. So you're helping me, trust me, you're helping me. Also, my Spotify, Apple Music, and I think Amazon, I don't remember, something else is gonna be down there. Also, my music is on YouTube. Should I put a lyric video for my single? I don't know. No one probably cares at this point. I wrote it in 2020, but it is still relevant. I need to keep it light, okay? This is gonna be a very heavy video series, and I'm not talking about heavy. I'm talking about the subject matter, whatever. Just, today we are talking about, wow, I've been rambling on for 5.5 minutes, and I'm just now getting to the point. As you can tell in the title, my adoptive dad has cancer. By the way, in case you didn't know, I'm adopted. I never thought I would talk about this ever, to be honest. It's not something I keep secret. When I was younger, when people would find out, they'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And I'd be like, what, why? Why are you sorry? My opinion on that has changed a lot in the last year. Please don't ever say I'm sorry to someone, by the way, but also don't ever tell them they should be grateful. Just don't say anything, just ask what do you need. A little bit of background on the cancer thing. My adopted... Hold on, I gotta take a pause. As long as we're doing hella disclaimers, there's probably gonna be a lot of random jump cuts in this video because I'm probably gonna get really stressed talking about this. But anyways, people would always just assume that it was a bad thing. And when I was a kid, I didn't think it was. Now I do. We're gonna talk about that more, I think, in the second and third videos. But for right now, my adoptive dad has smoked since he was in high school, and he's 64, so that's a long time. All of his family has had cancer. His parents died of it. I'm pretty sure one of his older brothers had it. He's still alive. I don't know if that's why his sister died, but she was severely ill her whole life. So it could be genetic, it could be the smoking, we don't really know. And then also he had a surgery a few years ago on a tooth that had a bunch of nerve damage, and then the tooth started to deteriorate, and when he had it taken out, he was supposed to not smoke and still kept smoking, so don't smoke, kids. So, the doctors don't really know why he has cancer, but it is a thing that's normal in his family. He honestly is kind of surprised he's made it this long without getting sick. He did have a heart attack when I was 7 or 8 years old, and he was like 45. So, and he did run a business. His dad died of cancer and basically told his kids to take over. So he was stressed all the time. So we don't really know what caused it, but it is in the same area as the tooth that he had to have surgery on. It was kind of funny though, because he was on so many pain meds. He would be walking around at 4 in the morning, putting stuff on his head. The reason I'm talking about this is because I don't really know how to feel about it, because my opinion on my relationship with my adoptive parents has changed a lot in the last year. So in the next couple videos, I'm going to talk about my situation and how it changed my perspective basically. But for the purposes of this video, all you need to know is I was adopted and I gave up my child for adoption. So that is why my opinions have changed a lot. As far as I know, I'm the only person I know who has been on both sides of it. Most of the people I know a couple people who gave their kids up for adoption, and it was because they were homeless, newly sober or not sober, didn't really know what was going on, and basically had no choice. So that's also why I was adopted. My birth dad is an addict. I have no idea where he is. I don't even think he has social media, so he's probably not gonna see this. My sisters grew up with him and they don't like him, so I'm kind of glad I never met him. But yeah, he's still out there. I don't know where he is. My adoptive parents adopted us basically because we were going to get taken away anyway. At some point, my parents were living with us in a car. Me and my brother, same parents, we were adopted together. And this was not a decision they just made for funsies, right? Like, imagine if you have kids, imagine when they were 2 years old, suddenly your house burnt down and it was snowy outside and you had to have them go live with their grandparents until you could get a new house. But you had to work all the time to pay for the new house. What would have happened, except that my parents are different races and their parents were racist against each other. So we had to go somewhere else. So they didn't want us to end up in foster care. I am originally from Birmingham, Alabama, and that was where they were living when we were given up for adoption. And at the time, in the 90s, it was a really, really crappy place to live. And then my brother was born in Sacramento, so if they had stayed there, it would have been about the same. Their options were CPS or this, which sucks. That should not be anyone's only options, especially when you're somewhere where foster care is not well regulated. I don't know that it even is here because a lot of the people I knew in school that grew up in the system where I live now, it wasn't great. So yeah, we were put up for adoption and they had already had us, so it's not like they just wanted to do this, you know, nobody wants to do this. So I basically grew up my whole life believing that both my parents were junkies and that they were terrible people, but that they loved us enough to save us from having to experience that. I found out last year from the lady who worked with my parents at the adoption agency in Alabama that that was not true. That my dad had problems already and he was like 5 years older than my mom, but that my mom had actually grown up around that and had never done anything up until that point in her life because she didn't want to end up like her family. My mom's dead. Okay, she died from an overdose. She started doing drugs after the adoption. This is not an anomaly. It is very, 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 very highly likely that someone who is adopted or loses a child for any reason will at some point abuse substances or attempt suicide. So if you're adopted and you feel crazy for not thinking it was a gift, you're not alone. Please get help. There are resources in the description. So she actually didn't do anything, yes, including drinking, until after all of this happened, and it did not end well for her. I don't want to be like that, so that's why I'm talking about it. So I grew up my whole life thinking they were like this forever, but it turned out that it was just my parents. Well, first of all, my parents are old enough to be their parents. Like, there's a big age gap, right? I'm Gen Z. My parents are literal boomers, not in the like, you're a fucking boomer, Karen. Oh my God, call the cops again. I dare you. I want to speak to the manager. No, they're literally that old. My dad's 64. It's like a 40-year age gap. So there's also a knowledge gap. I went to school for business, but I minored in psychology. And I learned more in a couple of psychology classes than I had learned my whole life from my parents about mental illness. And my mom has 3 childhood development degrees, but she got them all in the 2000s. So outdated information already. So they thought that my mom, in particular, was sending these letters over time, which, by the way, I never got. I have them, I still haven't opened them. That's another can of worms that we're gonna open in the next video. I grew up my whole life believing that they never wanted to talk to us or that they were too unstable, but it turned out that my mom had bipolar and was unmedicated. I have bipolar. I am now medicated. It's great. It helps a lot. I just grew up believing a lot of things that weren't true or that were basically my parents. I don't even know how to put it. I know they're gonna watch this. This is the hard part about adoption is like the people who adopt you are usually your biggest supporters, but they also are the least equipped in any way other than financial to raise you. I'm from the United States. If you don't know, in the United States, 9 times out of 10 in an adoption situation, the person adopting the child is an older white person with a lot of money, and the child is usually not white and in a lot of cases not from the United States. So you kind of grow up feeling like a third culture child, even though you're not. When you're adopted, you get that same feeling, but also people are telling you to be grateful. You grow up feeling like an outsider everywhere because you probably don't have any connection to your birth family. And for me, and most of us, to be honest, you also have no connection to your adoptive family because you're not going to be from the same background they are. I'm going to use the term WASP. WASP, White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Also used to refer to Catholics in some instances, but the basic idea is that you're the stereotypical white picket fence American. A white family, a nuclear family, probably hate the gays, which is great because I'm gay. Protestant meaning Christian, but probably not these kinds of Christian. And they usually have a lot of money, and Anglo-Saxon just means they're probably... Am I allowed to say this? So very, very, very opposite of me, a Black, Native, and Jewish Southerner who also turned out to be very flamingly homosexual. I grew up pretty much having to pretend to be a completely different person to fit in, and then constantly being told that it was a gift and I should be grateful and I was loved and blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, over time, I pretty much... Like everything I was taught growing up, I disagree with, and it's not because I'm rebelling against my parents, it's because they literally did not know any better to be raising someone 40 years younger than them with a completely different background. And 2 of us, actually, because again, me and my brother were adopted at the same time. Now, my brother doesn't talk about it a whole lot, so I'm not going to go into that very much, but basically, he left when he was 18. He had started talking to our birth mom again, and he did remember her because he was old enough at the time we were adopted. So he was very, very upset when he left. And at the time, I didn't know, right? All I knew was, I need to put a joke in here somewhere. It's going to get too depressing. Here's a fat zebra. I grew up believing a lot of things that, honestly, a lot of mixed families end up having to deal with. Now I disagree with all of that stuff. And I got to a point, like my brother, where I was extremely angry about the whole situation once I kind of learned more about the background, especially in the last year when I was looking for adoption records and birth records. Once I learned more about what was going on, I was like, oh, so you're telling me that all these things that I was thinking in the back of my mind my whole childhood were true? You're telling me you taught me how to gaslight myself, basically? And again, I really don't think they did it on purpose. I genuinely think they were too old to know any better. Because, I mean, even since I got out of college, there's been so much growth on just knowledge about bipolar or cluster B personality disorders or autism and how you can be autistic and ADHD at the same time. They didn't even think that was possible in 2013. There's a lot of things that they just didn't know, and then they were trying to raise kids that were inevitably going to have to deal with those things. But I'm still pretty angry about it, to be quite honest. So I find out my dad has cancer, and my first thought is, I don't know whether I should be relieved or sad. We found out that so far the cancer hasn't spread. He's supposed to have surgery next week that's supposed to take care of it. But most of the people in his family died of cancer, so it wouldn't be surprising if it came back or if he had a different form later. And I genuinely had a period of time where I was like, I don't know if I should be relieved about this, because I don't have to pretend to like you anymore. Ouch. The problems with growing up with rich people, and I know this is such a first world problem to have, is that you don't learn how to do anything by yourself. I grew up with a dad who was a mechanic and an owner of a car dealership. I don't know how to change a tire because he would just buy them. So I had to learn a lot of stuff in like 6 months while I was pregnant because I'd never been taught how to do it before, because I was always like, oh, they'll just buy it for me. Even when I asked them to, and they wouldn't, they just would buy new stuff and be like, you don't have to worry about it. And I'm like, okay, now I don't know how to do anything and I look stupid to all my friends. Because again, I'm brown and I'm gay. My friends do not look like my parents, but I still feel left out of that culture because I grew up with stuff just getting handed to me. So all my friends are talking about like, oh, I have to deal with this and this and this. Like one of my friends had a kid when he was 16 and I had to drop out of school and take care of him. And he would get mad at me because I didn't want to buy off-brand bread. That is the gap we're talking here. And that guy was white. Like, he just grew up poor. So there was a lot of resentment just from like not knowing how to do things that everybody else my age seemed to know. Like I didn't move out until I was 19, and I literally moved out, not because I had to, but because I asked if I could get this tattoo, okay? My ears were like this size. I have sized down. And I think I only had this side of my nose pierced, maybe this side, but I didn't have doubles and I didn't have a septum. And I asked if I could get this tattoo. Again, WASP, they're Christian. It's a Christian tattoo. And he said, I can't stand looking at you right now. So I moved out. Like, that's what I grew up with. I grew up with people who wanted me to be a different person, wanted me to be the person that they thought would have the best chance at succeeding, because the most important thing that they were always taught growing up by their parents who lived through the Depression, that's how old they are, they were taught that the best way to progress in life is go to college, get a 9-to-5, own a business, and appear white at all costs. A little bit before my parents were born, it was still illegal in my state for a white person to marry a black person. That's how old they are. So they thought this is the way to succeed. So they tried to push us in that direction. Again, I dropped out of college twice. I am not that person. I moved out because he didn't like how I chose to look. And like, I've wanted to look that way since I was 5. I would draw on my arms. I would draw characters with tattoos and piercings. I would stick those little, those sticky like 90s fake jewelry. I would stick them on my face instead of my ears. I always wanted to be this person, but they thought that I wouldn't be able to get a job because they grew up when like, oh, tattoos mean you're a prisoner or in a gang or whatever. And I'm like, it's North Dakota. Nobody's in a gang here. Just doxed myself, but whatever. So I grew up basically being told to pretend to be the opposite of what I was. And then when I was old enough to be like, no, I'm not going to do that, we started fighting a lot. I pierced my ears multiple times with a thumbtack. Do not recommend doing that in high school because they wouldn't let me go get it done. Like, we're talking that kind of stuff. But also, like, even just learning about different religions, we'd get into fights over that. Or I remember I came out as bisexual because I thought I was bisexual for a while. I'm not. But my mom literally laughed and said, you're full of shit, which I guess is better than them being like, we're gonna pray the gay away. I guess it's better than that, but it's still not the reaction you're hoping for, and you're 12 and insecure, and I had an eating disorder. I was already insecure enough, and then that. So then finding out, oh, this person's not gonna live very long. They weren't just joking about it, they're getting fucking old. I have definitely had to process it on like the level of, yeah, this is a person that I've known for so long that it would kind of be hard not to feel grief, but I'm really sick of feeling like I have to pretend to be a different person around this person. It got to a point where from when I was, I think, 19 until this last month, actually, I constantly thought that if I did anything wrong, if I relapsed, we'll just say that they would take my car away and I wouldn't have any freedom and I would end up homeless because my job entirely relies on my car. Yep. Feeling like if the person that supposedly gave you a gift by legally buying you, that's what adoption is, legally buying you from other people who really, really loved you and wanted to keep you but couldn't financially do it, that if you disappoint them or aren't the person that they want you to be, they're going to take away your way to make a living. Blended families are obviously the norm now, but some of them really should not be. I don't think adoption is the right answer at all. Statistics agree with me. I don't think it's a backup option for infertility. I struggled with infertility myself before getting pregnant, and I would rather go through that again for the rest of my life than deal with this. As far as I know, like I said, the cancer hasn't spread. He is going to have surgery to take out the tumors, and then theoretically it should be fine. But for that period of time where we didn't know if it had spread, I literally had to sit there and, I mean, we could talk about religious trauma for days. I had to sit there and be like, is there something wrong with me for being happy that this will be over soon? You know, like that's a really hard thing to sit with as a person who was taught to always put other people's feelings first and to always people please. And also it's really hard because the more I learn about what my birth parents were actually like, and the more I learn about my own cultures that I'm actually like genetically a part of, the more I realize that my childhood was actually pretty neglectful. And though I didn't have to deal with like my friend did, growing up poor, having addicts in the house, being homeless, I did not get what I needed to be an authentic person. And so to try and process the person who, yes, gave me all the material things I could ever need, but also didn't encourage me to get tested for autism, didn't encourage me to get on the right medication for my mental illnesses, didn't respect that addiction was a disease and that it was possible that I would suffer too. To sit there and be like, this person is the same person, and that there might be something wrong with me if I'm happy that they're gone. I'm gonna take a break. I just tried to record something and I ran out of storage space. So now I have 2 terabytes of cloud storage. This is making me want to buy the terabyte iPhone more and more, but we're not gonna do that. The last thing I wanted to talk about was either my grandpa on my dad's side or his dad, I can't remember, was adopted, but that was like in the 1890s. So basically what happened was if a woman couldn't take care of her child, she would, or someone else would, leave the child literally on a doorstep of a hospital or a rich family. And usually it was a family that had a similar background. So in my dad's family's case, that was Irish Catholic. So they wouldn't necessarily tell you where you came from, which is part of where the stigma and the people being like, oh, I'm sorry, comes from with adoption. They wouldn't tell you that you were different. And also you didn't know because you looked the same as them. For me, it's like, especially when I was a baby and I didn't, flat iron my hair. And also I have vitiligo, so I like turn white. When I was a baby, I was way darker and I had a fro. Nobody thought that I was my parents' kid. There was no hiding it. And that's usually what happens nowadays with adoption is a white family will adopt a child who is not white, and it's very obvious. Kind of hard for me with my child because she looks a lot whiter than I do. My child is a little bit pasty, okay? Embrace the paste. My nose is dripping. Nose drips every time I wear makeup. Like, am I allergic to makeup? Because I look fabulous, so I don't care. So when my grandpa or great grandpa, whatever, was adopted, they didn't have to try to fit in, they just did already. So it was very different. So like my dad grew up having that view of adoption of like, you could fit into the family, they would still love you the same. That's not what happens with interracial or transracial adoptions. Hi, you wanna be in the video? We got a whole video coming about you soon. So there he is. He's fat, look at him. Oh, bye-bye. So what happened with my dad's family was very different than what happened with me and my brother. This is now the norm. We do still have a similar kind of thing in place. It's called safe haven laws. So depending on what state you're in, for up to a year of your beginning of your child's life. If you feel like you can't take care of them, you can leave them at the hospital. It's kind of the same thing, but not really. So normally adoptions in the United States are families of different races. Usually the parents are white. So it's really difficult to fit in when you literally look nothing like them. And I just don't think that's okay. I don't think they had the education to know that was okay 25 years ago. I think now it's a lot more well documented, but it's still very stigmatized to talk about. I have yet to be able to find anyone or anywhere online that is willing to talk about this openly and be like, yeah, it sucks. And I know there are Facebook groups for it. I'm honestly scared to go in them because even when I go into Facebook groups that are meant for people like me, I still am pushed to the side. There's not a lot of places where I can talk about what I feel without someone trying to talk over me. I am so used to not fitting into spaces even that are supposedly meant for me that I haven't found anywhere to be able to talk about how adoption is actually really traumatic and harmful. So if you need a place to talk about it, please do so in the comments. You are not alone, and I will not tell you that you're wrong. Even if you do love it and you think you were given the best life and you think that it is a gift, that's cool. That's your experience. It's still not a great thing, and it's definitely overhyped as like the answer. There are a lot of things that just basically caused me to have a hard time with my reaction to finding out my dad had cancer, because I'm like, okay, everyone in his family has died of cancer so far. It would be kind of a relief to not have to feel this mental gymnastics all the time anymore, but also like religious trauma that I grew up with. I literally feel guilty about every single thought I have that isn't praise Jesus, the Lord Edith, and the Lord Youngeth away. Or a lot of people like to say phrases like playing the race card or I don't see color or whatever. These things do impact our lives as long as, unfortunately, we still live in a society that prioritizes certain voices over others. And as a person of color who was adopted, my voice is not prioritized. So I'm making this video so that if anybody else struggles with these kind of thoughts, especially about your adoptive parents, they know they're not alone. They're not the only person that thinks that way. Actually, statistically, you're far from it. Just most of us don't talk about it because we don't want to be gaslit about our own experiences. So I don't know if this is a joke or not, but just throwing it at the end. I got a face tattoo. 2.5 months ago. Again, I moved out when I was 19 because my dad didn't like how I looked before I had any tattoos, and I had like half the piercings. And my mom told me not to get a face tattoo until he died. And I said, no, I'm 25. I'm getting a face tattoo. Squeaky, squeak. My cat is so offended that somebody opened the door. If y'all wanna talk about it in the comments, feel free. I'm probably honestly not gonna read very many of the comments or answer them because it's a really difficult topic for me, but I just want people to know this is not a rare thing. Like, again, I'll put some resources in the description. Statistically, we are very, very likely to have mental health issues, not do well in school, attempt suicide, abuse drugs. I personally have been sober for 18 months.
Wow.
It's a thing. It's pretty normal. So don't worry, you're not crazy and you're not ungrateful. I really, really hate that word. That is all I have for this video. Again, this is going to be a 3-part series. So I'm going to be talking about how my pregnancy went and why I chose adoption. And then I'm also going to talk about my experiences with infertility, because I think that needs to be discussed when discussing adoption, because a lot of people see adoption as the answer to not being able to have your own kids. I do not agree. It is absolutely not the answer, as someone who has been on both sides of it. And at one point I had considered adoption myself. I absolutely will not do that. That is all for this video. Thank you for watching. I know it's super long, but it's probably the most important thing I'm going to talk about on here, so I'd really appreciate it if you watch the whole thing. Also, if you know anyone who is considering adoption, or if you know anyone who's adopted who feels like they're left out of the conversation, send it to them, share it, post it wherever you want to. This is absolutely made to be informative and to be shared with other people. Also, if you want to give it a like and also turn on my notifications so you know when parts 2 and 3 are going to go up. I will be setting those to premiere as well, so you have a little more time to mentally prepare, because that's kind of a heavy topic. And I am an artist. I am going to be posting a lot more music content on this channel, but I do still want to talk about these kind of things because they inspire my music, and they're things that I can't really talk about any other places. So let me know what you want to see. Hi, kitty! That is all I have for today. Thank you for watching. All of my links and other social medias will be in the description for my music as well. Bye! I'm going to do some kind of like really dramatic sad thumbnail. Life of a YouTuber.